Phil Savage, welcome back to Tuscaloosa, Alabama. I hope you're doing well.
Well, good afternoon, Ryan. Yeah, speaking of music, when I visit these colleges in search of players for the Reese Senior Bowl, these coaches have figured out that they have to have a wide range of music as well. So they'll go from rap to country and everything in between.
It gets you fired up, man. I mean, Marquise has brought a lot of different. He's expanding me a little bit. I mean, I'm in here, and I don't really have any moves, but I at least put on some. I don't want you to like scout me out or anything, but I've been trying to at least put a few moves on during the break. You know how radio is. You hear that music, it gets you energized a little bit, so it's good.
That's right. Of course, virtually every school in the country plays music now in their at least in their pre-practice. But there's one school that doesn't use music. They got Scott Cochran, and that's the Alabama Crimson Tide.
Absolutely, and I don't think Nick Saban's ever going to bring music. I'll be shocked if he does. But listen, I know you anticipate, and you've worked extremely hard here, 4th and goal every day. When you look at this book, I mean, we're hours away from it being released. People can pre-order it right now, Amazon.com. The excitement, the anticipation for football, but you've got to be excited this book is hitting the shelves tomorrow.
Yeah, everyone's pointing to Saturday for the real kickoff of the season, but this date, tomorrow, August 29th, has been on the calendar for quite some time, and it's hard to believe it's actually here. This is a project that took really about a year and a half to completely finish, and I'm excited about tomorrow. I think that the people that have pre-ordered the book and those that will ultimately buy the book will really enjoy it, because it's going to give them some insight that I don't think they'll find anywhere else. From myself being a native of the state of Alabama and being here during the Coach Bear Bryant era, to my time in Cleveland with Bill Belichick and Nick Saban and part of that illustrious staff that was put together in the early 90s to these last 8 years as the color analyst for Alabama. That was really the essence of the book, was trying to link all of those things together, the importance of football within the state, the culture of football at the University of Alabama, with some background and history of my own and the other elements that have gone into turning Alabama into the true superpower that it is right now.
And, Phil, let me ask you, just what was your goal? And I know it's 4th and goal every day, but when you set out and you talked about your mission of trying to accomplish and try to get people to understand, sure, they need to read the book, but what was the goal of Phil Savage that you wanted people to walk away after reading the book?
I think one of the goals was just the fact that this will be my 30th season in the game, in a lot of different positions with a lot of variety, and I wanted to share some of those experiences with people. But above and beyond that, I wanted to try to educate the fans, not only of Alabama, but across the country, the landscape of college football in particular, to educate them on what it takes to win. There's a misconception out there that Alabama just recruits 5-star players, they roll them out on the field, and they win every game. And it goes so much deeper than that. You know, some of these players are capable of coming in and starting as true freshmen. Others need 2 or 3 years of incubation time, development time before they can get on the field. And, I just wanted to try to give people an appreciation of what goes in and what has gone into the success of the Alabama program, especially over the last 9 years.
Phil, I want to pick your brain on a lot of different things, but let me start with news out of Buffalo today. Reggie Ragland getting traded to Kansas City. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I'm not surprised. There's been some talk out there that this might be a move the Bills would be willing to make. Of course, he was drafted by Rex Ryan and Doug Whaley, the former GM, who was released after this draft. And so oftentimes when a new coach, new GM come in, they change schemes. They don't have any loyalty to the players that were drafted by the previous regime. So I know after Reggie hurt his knee last year, there was a lot of talk that he had gotten heavy and had tried to work his way back into shape. But he's a true Mike linebacker, and I think for Kansas City, this could potentially work out well for them, and I think it could work well for Reggie because obviously this helps their depth, and I think he can be an heir apparent at that Mike spot for the Chiefs. With Derek Johnson, of course, has been a long-time linebacker, but he's had a couple of injuries in recent years, so it's a nice insurance policy for Kansas City.
Phil, as you approach hours away, talk about the prep work as you begin to look at Florida State. And I know you've been doing this for several months now, but as we're now game week, give me some insight. What do you see in this Florida State football team?
Well, first of all, with Jimbo Fisher being the head coach, of course, he worked with Nick Saban for 5 years down at LSU. He understands what the mental frame of mind will need to be for his team, both from a physical and emotional side. So, that's an advantage that Bama has over a number of their opponents during the year, especially those that are non-conference teams. And so that's part of it. FSU also brings back DeAndre Francois. He's really one tough customer. I mean, this kid got knocked around a lot last year, emerged as the ACC Rookie of the Year. So those are two real positives for FSU. In my mind, though, Ryan, as I watch the tapes of FSU and, obviously know the Alabama team pretty well, I really think that both defenses in this environment, new stadium, just a completely different environment for both teams. Nobody's ever been inside this stadium before at the college level. So, you put all that into the mix, and I think the defenses are really going to dictate the action here. I don't expect either offense to be able to consistently move the football. Yes, will they have several drives? Probably so, but I just don't anticipate both offenses being able to go up and down the field. So I'm expecting somewhat of a defensive battle, and obviously special teams will play a role in it as well.
Let me ask you about Jalen Hurts. How do you see him improving as a passer going into year number 2?
Well, I think last year, they really played to Jalen's strengths, which were his running ability and, his ability to take the top off of the defense by throwing the ball over their heads. I mean, that first roll to his right and the throw over the heads of the USC Trojans, that just sent a message to the remaining opponents that, wait a minute, we're going to have to defend the field horizontally because of his legs and vertically because of his arm strength. Now it's Alabama's task, the coaching staff, to fill in the blanks. And what I mean by that is for him to become a more proficient passer from the pocket, second and third down, those 3rd and 5, 3rd and 10 type calls. I think that's the next level step for Jalen. I'm very anxious to see what kind of progress he's made during the off season and through training camp and actually seeing it applied to the game day on Saturday night against Florida State.
Phil Savage right now with us, color analyst for the Crimson Tide, as scout for the Reese's Senior Bowl, the senior executive there, the director of the Reese's Senior Bowl there in Mobile. Is this by far the best secondary he will play all year?
Certainly, you could make that case. I mean, they bring back Derwin James, who missed 10 games last year. Many expect him to be one of the best defensive players in the country. Nate Andrews has not gotten much attention, but he's been a consistent regular for FSU. In their secondary in a sort of a sub-package linebacker hybrid safety role. He's a native of Fairhope, so, he's a player that went down I-10 to FSU. So they get both of those players back from injury. Then you factor in Tavares McFadden at one corner and the rest of that secondary. And, they can run to the football. They've got some coverability, and of course, both FSU and Alabama majored in rushing the quarterback last year in terms of the number of sacks and pressuring the passer. So both secondaries benefit from what happens in front of them, but both sets of defensive backs for Alabama and Florida State can really stand on their own 2 feet and on their own talent.
We're talking to Phil Savage right now. Let me ask you about their offensive line. That's been a big question going into this season for Florida State's offensive line. How much can we truly expect them to get better? Just a year older, do you see this offensive line improving, or do you expect there will be a lot of improvement going into this season?
Well, I think that's the number one question and the number one advantage that Bama may have on FSU is the Bama front line against the Florida State offensive line. You know, last year they were 108th in the country in sacks allowed, and that doesn't even count all the other hits. You know, Francois got hit 74 times, which led the ACC in that category. So they were porous up front. We're going to see Brock Rubel most likely at left tackle. He's about 6'8", and then Rick Leonard's the converted defensive lineman that made the conversion to right tackle last year. He's 6'7". But both of those guys struggled some last year. We'll see how they fill in the blanks everywhere else. Landon Dickerson's a big burly right guard for the Noles. Alec Eberle is the center. So they have 4 players coming back with good experience, but they did not play particularly well a year ago, and I think that that's probably been a huge focus for them in the off season and through training camp. So I'm anxious to see what kind of improvements they've made, and you know, is it personnel, is it technique? What will be the right combination for Florida State to improve that part of their team?
Bill, do you think this defense in Tuscaloosa will drop off any from last year?
I don't know that I would use the term drop-off. I think it would be very difficult for this defensive team in 2017 to replicate what last year's unit did with the 11 non-offensive touchdowns. I mean, it seemed like every ball that went on the ground or was picked off in the air went back for a touchdown. I think it would be unreasonable for people to expect this defensive unit to be able to mimic that from a year ago, but can they be very good? We're going to find out. But look, it's not about the size or the talent or the speed. It's all about the experience and how fast this particular group of 11 to 15 players or so can get on the field together, adjust together on the sidelines, communicate all those things out, and then actually put it into action on the field.
We're talking to Phil Savage as we finish up. You can go right now to Amazon.com. 4th and Go every day. Tomorrow it is out, the August 29, 2017 date. It's available right there. You can go and pre-order that and have it delivered, but you can wait and also download it right there with the app as well and be able to soak up some Alabama football knowledge and great insight as we cover the University of Alabama. You look at Nick Saban, there's always some kind of way that he delivers that message. There's always a point, even today, the negative around Raekwon Davis. He used that to talk to the rest of the team, talking about things that they should do, responsibility. I mean, Nick Saban never wasted an opportunity to get a message across, and I'm sure that comes across in the book.
Yeah, and, that's the thing that I've marveled at in terms of watching Nick Saban over the years. I was with he and Bill Belichick in the early Browns days in the 1990s, and he went on the practice field, coached the defensive backs and the defensive unit, and that was the extent of his responsibilities in those days. If you walk out on the practice field this afternoon in Tuscaloosa, you're going to see the same drills, a lot of the same drills, same fundamentals, techniques. Nick Saban coaching, throwing the football, and yet he's responsible for that messaging to the media, for the academic progress of the team, for the discipline, for the strength and conditioning, the offense, the defense, the special teams, and he's never let go of the coaching wheel, so to speak, and not a lot of people can do that and stay fully engaged with their football team, and Nick Saban's been able to do it, and he's done it better than anybody maybe of all time. He's certainly going to be on the Mount Rushmore of college coaches when it's all said and done.
Yeah, I cannot wait to read the book because it's covered him for 10 years here in Tuscaloosa, but you sort of peel back the onion a little bit, learn how the sausage is made behind the scenes. 4th and Go every day, Amazon.com. Phil Savage has put together a book, Alabama's Relentless Pursuit of Perfection. We'll see if this season's able to live up to that, but it's going to be a great launch tomorrow, Amazon.com. Phil, as always, thank you again for your time. I appreciate you jumping on and talking some Alabama football with us.
All right, Ryan, looking forward to the season. It starts Saturday night in Atlanta. It's going to be exciting, and hope you have a great year. Roll Tide.